Everyone, I am Joaquin Mobley, Motus's JustUs project strategist, a JustUs monologuist, and the Vice President of Community Works. We are delighted to be coming to you from the Dairy Arts Center on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Today, every American is challenged to recommit to keeping alive Dr. King's vision. Motus Theater's contribution to this commitment is sharing stories from our JustUs project of people on the front lines of the criminal legal system. Challenging racial and economic injustice was at the heart of King's work. And the criminal legal system is where these two systemic oppressions come together most devastatingly in our country today.
My name is Armando Peniche. I am a monologuist in another of Motus's monologue projects, Motus's Undocumented series. I am also the partnerships and project manager with Motus Theater, where we create original theater to facilitate dialogue on critical issues of our time. We use the power of art to build alliances across diverse segments of our community. Before we begin, we want to acknowledge that we are here together on the ancestral lands of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and the Ute, who were violently dispossessed of these lands. And we honor our responsibility to be a part of a movement toward making meaningful amends.
We also want to acknowledge the people who lost their homes in the recent fires and the ongoing challenges of racism, health, and economic fears, or having beloved family and friends in prison who are experiencing greater exposure to COVID-19. So before we begin, I would like each of you at home to join me in taking 3 collective deep breaths. Ready? Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. One more time. Inhale, exhale. Thank you.
Just one more thing I want to add before we begin. Community leader and Motus Theater JustUs monologuist Candace Bailey was honored yesterday at the Greater Denver Ministerial Alliance's Martin Luther King Jr. service with the Political Advocate of the Year award, in part for her work in collaboration with the ACLU to block the City of Aurora charter that excluded a person with a felony conviction from serving on the City Council.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. One of Motus's strategies for the JustUs tour to strengthen our community and country is to present allied performances called Shoebox Stories, where we ask people often in positions of public leadership in our communities and country to stand in the shoes of a JustUs Motus monologuist and read their story aloud. Prior to each performance, the guest reader meets with the monologuist, who shares their story with them as a sort of ritual to pass on the weight of the story. Then, during the performance, the guest reader reads aloud the story back to the monologuist. The readers don't need to agree with everything they read in the story. They just need to be willing to suspend judgment, model courageous empathy, and see the world for a moment through someone else's eyes.
Today, you will hear Deborah Richardson, Executive Director of Colorado ACLU, co-read Brandon Wainwright's autobiographical monologue. Ms. Richardson's presence with us today is particularly important because this is a day to honor not just Martin Luther King Jr., but civil rights leaders. And Ms. Richardson's parents helped plan the famous March on Washington, where Dr. King delivered his famous speech, "I Have a Dream." And we are thrilled that Velveta Golightly-Howell, the first Black female prosecutor in Colorado, founder of Sister to Sister, the international network of professional African American women, and member of ACLU Colorado Board of Directors, will co-read Joaquin's story. They will both model civic hospitality and deep listening by stepping into the shoes of a JustUs monologuist for a moment and reading aloud their personal stories. After the reading, they will reflect together with us on the impact of reading and how it relates to Dr. King's mission and the Colorado ACLU.
Absolutely. We are also excited that throughout this event, we have the pleasure of listening to the music by acclaimed a cappella artist Spirit of Grace, who will sing songs honoring not only the monologuists and readers, but songs honoring the civil rights movement. They offer this music as a restorative medicine, We hope when they sing to the monologuists and readers, you know they are also singing for you. So let their music inspire you so we all leave today more ready for the work ahead to keep Dr. King's vision alive and support true justice in our country.
It is an honor to be here today to celebrate and to share with each and every one of you and the monologuists and the readers, and to actually take a moment to turn away from what our norm is and our point of views, but to step into someone else's shoes. And so we sing this song in honor, paying homage to that. And it's the Motus Theater theme song. So we're honored to be able to sing it for you today. If you could just for a moment take a walk in my shoes, feel the weight of my burden, and see the world as I do. Maybe then we'll find a way to live a life where each can say, I respect who you are. So take a moment to refrain from all the judgment and the pain and hold my story for a while. If you could just for a moment let me walk in your shoes, to feel the weight of your burden, yeah, and see the world as you do. Neighbor, then I'll understand the sign of difference. Take your hand and respect who you are. I take this moment to refrain from all my judgment and my pain and hold your story for a while. And hold your story for a while. If you could just for a moment take a walk in my shoes.
Wow. Truly powerful. Truly powerful. Always a pleasure listening to you ladies. And now, my brother, my fellow Motus JustUs monologuist, Brandon Wainwright, and the Executive Director of the Colorado ACLU, Mrs. Deborah Richardson.
The whole thing, Phil. Can you hear me out there? Can you hear me? Everybody good? All right, we want to definitely thank you guys. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get adjusted over here. All right, I think I'm good now. Thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being here. Everyone that's at home, we definitely thank you for tuning in on this beautiful day, you know, Martin Luther King Day. Just want to start off by saying an injustice anywhere. I'm sorry, what is it? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If you don't know, that is Martin Luther King. All right, so, and now I have the honor of introducing Executive Director of Colorado ACLU, Deborah Richardson, who will join me to read my autobiographical monologue.
Thank you, Brandon. I had the good fortune of being raised in Atlanta in the community with Dr. King's parents. And so I saw firsthand the leaders of the American Civil Rights Movement, how much they sacrificed and how much they were intentional leaving the world better than how they found it. And Brandon, that quote that you just made with Dr. King is one of my favorites, absolutely. And now Brandon Wright's autobiographical monologue entitled, Trying to Live, I Lost My Life.
All right. At birth, my name was Brandon Marlowe Wainwright. That is the name my mother used, as well as the teachers in school. On the street, my name is Dub. D to the mother, UB. Or you can just call me Young Black King. But on a serious note, let me tell you that 90% of the people from my hood are considered failures. And I'm supposed to act like I can't be part of that 10% because of the way you think of me and the choices I've made to survive.
I have a young mother, young father, brothers and sisters at home. Barely food in the fridge or water, depending on if it was on. I'm surrounded by old heads and young'uns walking around with handguns, and they won't hesitate to let me know what they think of my honor roll ass if I can't fight. School is kind of a sanctuary, if you will, or a safe haven. It's like, look, I can be myself. I can be a nerd. I can be a thespian. I can do sports. I can do whatever I want while I'm in school because I'm living my life. This is how I want to live. This is how I want to live.
But outside of school, I put on a whole other mask. I fight, and I fight. Oh, and I fight. I am Dub. Me and my gang, we do what we do. Big time shoplifting, small time drug dealing. Like I said, in my hood, 90% of the people are considered failures, and they are the people whose approval I need in order to survive. And you might not like the guys I hang out with, but they are the ones who have my back, and you best believe I have theirs. Oh yeah, I do. And this is not the life I want to live, but it is the life I have to live.
Things become harder when I turned 16. I stood up for my brother against my father, and for that, I'm out of the house. I'm no longer his mouth to feed. From 16 on, there isn't anyone giving me a roof, clothes, food, and I have to go and do that with the help of my gang, and that's why I said I had to live, find a way. And then I was losing my life because at a young age, trying to be an adult, you can't really have a life. You got to kind of give that up. But still, I am a star student, honor roll, and state champion athlete, blah, blah, blah. Against all odds, I still kept my cards. I kept my cards. And by my senior year, it is clear I'm going to be part of the 10% that makes it. That makes it. Women, money, cars. I'm headed for the NFL. I have a full ride sports scholarship, and I'm choosing the offers. I'm even going to be prom king.
So with all this headed my way, did anyone ask me on January 12th of my senior year why I shoplifted? Well, let's just say I robbed 6 video stores in one night. It's a little, old school for some of you out there. You may not know what a video store is, Blockbuster. But 6 in one night. Instead of working hard to prove what a terrible criminal I was, did anyone consider I might have also been a young man having a hard time and needing some help? Did anyone sit in a circle with me and say, Brandon Wainwright, what were you thinking? 6 stores in one night? You must have known you would have got caught. For a few $1,000s, you threw away a $100,000 full ride college scholarship. You were going to be part of that 10%. Why, Brandon?
No, they didn't ask. They charged me with robbery. They kicked me out of school. They made an example of me. Nobody acknowledged that I had to be the best at being Brandon Wainwright, star athlete and star student, to make the 10% and thrive, and that I had to be the best at being Dub, to have shelter, food, and survive. They didn't acknowledge that I was locked in a terrible split that put surviving and thriving at war with each other. They acted like Brandon, the high school vice president of Future Business Leaders of America, was a lie, and that I had finally shown my true colors, black. As if I was by nature essentially a criminal. Nobody in the justice system or the school system cared enough to even ask why I did what I did. Nobody.
And, well, it's a long story. It's a long story. But let me just say, at the moment I made the decision, at the moment I made that decision, I was exhausted by the fight, and I didn't even care. You wanna know why I didn't care? Because that night I was hurting and I didn't feel any love. You know why I didn't feel any love? Because I wasn't getting it from the parents who I thought had made me their son. They didn't come to my games. They didn't care that I was on the honor roll, that I was going to college, or that I had a scholarship. They didn't even have to pay for it.
And why wasn't I getting that love? Because I was living on my own at 16, away from the only home I'd ever known, and because my parents were young and they hadn't grown up with much love. And they were busy fighting poverty, fighting racism, fighting their own ignorance, fighting to survive themselves, and tired of fighting with me and struggling how to raise a young black son in a place where the streets have so much more power and a parent has so little. Or you can just knock it down to the fact that where I was raised, you're either born with it or you're born without it, no matter what you apply that to. And I thought I'd rather be caught with it than without it. I'd rather down my feet than live on my knees. I needed money to live, for food, shelter, clothes on my back, and maybe to graduate looking nice in that prom king suit I was going to pay with some of this cash.
Yeah, it's a long story that you slam into one righteous move of your gavel, and you would have to actually care about me to understand. Instead of any help and support dealing with the challenges I faced, I got a lifelong label as a criminal and more obstacles to overcome. I was already tired and the fight just got harder, but I'm not giving up. I have two beautiful daughters, London and Anina, a handsome son. His name is Nasir, which means helper and one who gives victory. So everything that I do from this point on is for my kids and for my family, so they will never go through what I went through, because I'm always going to be here for them, whether physically or spiritually. I'm always going to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, for the honesty and power you've displayed in sharing your truth. The truth is, it was a catch-22. Either you lose or you lose. The truth is, you spoke to being trapped. The truth is, our ancestors were trapped so many years ago. And so we offer this song to you, to those living in the trap right now, in honor of those who have escaped the trap, and in honor of our ancestors. This song simply says, prepare. We are going to escape, and you must be ready. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh. This soul journey soon be over. This soul journey soon be over. This soul journey soon be over. The time is drawing nigh. Children, don't get weary. Children, don't get weary. Children, don't get weary till your work is done. Children, don't get weary. Children, don't get weary. Children, don't get weary till your work is done. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing nigh. This here journey soon be over. This old journey soon be over. This old journey soon be over. The time is drawing nigh.
Got to take a deep breath after that one. Thank you again, Spirit of Grace. And before I go into my monologue, I just want to remind everybody what Martin Luther King stood for, right? A lot of us have a lot of the false pretenses that he was just, very passive, and that gets, some of the things he does get left out of how courageous he was. I also want to remind individuals that he was there pushing for economic equity, right? One of the last things he said was, we're going to the Capitol to get our check, right? And a lot of people don't remember that. And now I also want to introduce the black female prosecutor in Colorado, founder of Sister to Sister, the International Network of Professional African American Women, and member of the ACLU Colorado Board of Directors, Velveta Golightly-Howell. She's going to co-read my story.
Thank you, Joaquin, and thank you, Spirit of Grace, and thank you, Brendan and Deborah, for the monologue. I am a native Alabamian, born and raised, and I watched my father, who worked 2 jobs almost all his life, to provide for us 5 children. And I remember one evening when my father came home from his first job, and he did not grab a bite to eat and then run out to the next job. Instead, he took a bath. At the time, we didn't have a shower. And he dressed in one of his Sunday suits. My dad had this big smile on his face. And during my 19 years with him, I had never and did not ever see a smile that large. The reason that my dad was smiling was because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was in town, and he was going to hear him speak. And at such an early age, I did not understand why my father would be so happy and energized by that. However, I came to understand why. And that has led me on my personal journey as a racial and social justice advocate, activist, and agitator for equality, to just keep it moving. So it is an honor to be with you this afternoon, and I want to give thanks to my Heavenly Father, who is my strength, who guides my path, who holds me up when I just want to fall over. And now, Joaquin Mobley's autobiographical monologue entitled Unhireable. It's late fall, 2002. I'm 18 years old, full of strength and light. I tripped all the way from Washington Heights in Manhattan to Flushing, Queens, the last stop on the 7 train. Down to my last, I traveled to Home Depot to be interviewed for a job. Filled with hope and cloaked in desperation, I walked in to meet my potential new employer. His name was Sheldon. We interviewed, and I killed it. I killed it. I'm sure Sheldon felt my hunger. I detected his Caribbean accent, and I tried to find common ground, being that my father was from that part of the world, and I, too, was raised in that culture of hard work. He bought in on me working there. He told me how much I was going to love the job, and that I would make good money. Sheldon then took my Social Security number and stepped behind his desk to run it through his system.
I would not let myself feel anything but confident as he typed in the 9 digits that would determine my possibilities. I insisted on the image of him returning to me with his hand held out, ready to shake, and that I would return to my abuela with the reassurance of a new job. I had to. See, earlier that morning, the stakes had been raised. I had been startled awake, the sounds of bachata music, sobbing, police sirens, the soft conversation between 2 individuals outside my building discussing the terms and condition of the pre-purchase of narcotics. But those sounds are not what woke me. The noise of my neighborhood had become my background music, and in a weird way, it helped me sleep better. I could usually drown out even the loudest of those sounds, but that morning had been different. Something was off, something was wrong. There was no sweet, beautiful aroma of fried yuca, eggs, and onions that my abuela makes for me and my abuelo every morning. Nor did I hear the sound of Telemundo coming underneath my bedroom door. When I opened the door to my room, still halfway asleep, wiping the coal out of my eyes, I discovered that the sobbing sound that I had grown immune to was coming not from outside, but from our family living room. It was my abuela who was sobbing. I ran to her side and kneeled down in front of her. ¿Qué estás pasando, abuela? She handed me 2 letters, one from my abuelo, stating that he would not receive his Social Security for another year, and another from public housing, informing my grandparents that because I was on probation for a felony drug conviction, I had to leave my home or my entire family would be evicted. It's amazing what a day brings and takes from us in our poverty-stricken communities.
Just the night before, I had a feeling of stability and hope. After all, I had an actual job interview. Do you know how many applications an 18-year-old black man has to fill out before he can even get an interview? It was going to happen. My baby's mother needed money for diapers and food, and I was going to have it. But now, looking at those letters and my grandmother sobbing, the challenge was overwhelming. I didn't need just enough to support my kids and to start college. I now needed enough for rent, a security deposit, and utilities, or hold the possibility of being homeless. And I had to figure out how to help my grandmother pay her rent with no Social Security coming in. So, once again, despite the vision that I had gathered for myself in jail of getting a job, making it to college, and staying out of the drug game, I was having to consider going back into it and possibly risking my freedom and my life. In the last year, I had already lost 2 friends, murdered over rivalry for selling territory.
Trying to stay strong for my abuela, I kissed her and walked away to prepare for my interview at Home Depot in a new state of mind, one now heavy with threat and despair. But you can't let people see that and think that they will hire you. I showered and I dressed and used every item of clothing I put on to build me up, to regain my hope so I could get on that train and feel it all somehow working out. So there I was, sitting in Sheldon's office, practically praying, when his head finally reemerged from behind his computer screen. But just by looking at his face, I could tell something immediately had changed. Something wasn't right. I was now dead to him, or at least untouchable. He wouldn't even look at me. The numbers had rolled out, and I was officially unhireable.
I started talking fast, trying to regain my ground. I told him I could be on a probation period or something like that. I told him I needed this job to take care of my kids. I shared what I was up against economically. He was unmoved, and his response to my sob story was just, sorry. But I was not going home without a job. Please, Sheldon, listen. I'm trustworthy. I'm an honorable man. I'm asking for a shot, an opportunity, and a chance. He just looked at me, impervious to what I was going through, and asked that I leave the premises. I left not only the premises, but New York. My mom lived out in Colorado Springs, and I hoped to find work through her connections and stay out of the drug game. When I got to Colorado, I was surrounded by job offers in the community, none of them legal. Did you know that according to the Brookings Institute, a black man without a criminal record is less likely to get called back for a job than a white man who checked the felony box?
And as you guessed it, guys, I went to prison in 2006. I was given twice the amount of time for the same crime as the 2 white men who went up in front of the judge just before me. That startled me awake, even more than the cries of my abuela. I was awake and angry with the injustice of it and fierce with the intention of alchemy to take all the steel, concrete, brutality, and disregard they gave me as DOC number 147388 and turn it into my own armor. I may have to fight to survive, but I will not be your entertainment. I am not your victim, and I will not let you make me your victim. So every day, I gave myself a new challenge to help me keep my focus and my sanity. First, I built up my chest and biceps. As you guys can see, I like to work out. Then I learned how to read and write in the language of my abuelos, Spanish. After that, I learned to read Arabic, the language of the black leaders in prison who were resisting with self-respect, self-love, and prayer. I then re-enrolled in college and got several certifications, despite all the obstacles to getting my education in prison. And even with this arsenal of strengths, it was hard to stay out of prison when I was finally released nearly a decade later. They let me out with just $10 in my pocket, no fresh clothes, and no hope. I almost didn't make it, but I'm here. Despite nearly 10 years of preparing for that very moment, but I did, and now I work to support other people coming out of our prison system, guiding them as they take the skills they learned in illegal economies and transform themselves into entrepreneurs with legal opportunities, because this system simply wastes our brilliance. Thank you.
Oh, Joaquin. Every time I hear your story, it reminds me just how blessed all of us are to know you. I know it was terrible and difficult going through it, but I'm so grateful you made it through, because had you not, you wouldn't be able to reach down and lift up other people who had walked in your shoes. Just like Dr. King, you have become a leader. And I am so grateful for what you went through, because it made you the awesome man that you are today. One thing we did right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Oh, freedom is its name. It's gonna be our claim to fame. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Dr. Martin Luther King, oh, we know he had a dream. Oh, keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. He stood up and he fought. That's why today we sing. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Thank you so much, Spirit of Grace. Just so you all know, that's one of my favorite songs, and after hearing these powerful monologues, it was just what my heart needed. Thank you so much for that musical response. And now I would like to invite Deborah, Velveta, Joaquin, and Brandon to join me on stage, and we're going to reflect on what it was like to share this experience. All right, thank you for joining me on stage. And first, I would like to ask Velveta and Deborah, what most impacted you personally as you read Juaquin and Brandon's story?
Well, I'll go first. And I would just say in reading Joaquin's story, your story, Joaquin, I felt the pain, the despair, and the hopelessness, and that made me tremble. However, then I recognized that your strength is so powerful and that you had enough strength to keep walking up that mountain, although you faced so many obstacles. And so I am inspired by you. Thank you.
You know, Brandon, it was, in hearing your story, I realized that the only thing that separates any of us is luck and the accident of birth.
Yes.
If you'd been born in a different place and time, with different parents and different projections of their lives, you would have not had those horrible experiences. But the victory here is who you are now, that you're an incredible father, you're very accomplished, you've gone to college, and that you use that not to stop your life, but to really propel it going forward.
Thank you, Velveta and Deborah, for that reflection, that powerful reflection. And just, I agree, it's so inspiring to have you, Brandon and Joaquin. And just as a reminder to our audience, our monologuists got to read their monologues to Velveta and Deborah backstage, but they weren't allowed to have any interactions because we wanted to have these deep reflections and also have our guest readers just hold that story and actually step in those shoes. So thank you so much for doing that. And now I have the same question for Joaquin and Brandon. What most impacted you about having your story read aloud by Velveta Golightly-Howell and Deborah Richardson?
I'll say it was obviously emotional. You know, because you know, just hearing your voice and then hearing my words coming from your voice, it just gives me a whole another perspective. And like I was, we've spoken the back, but to me it made me feel like you knew, that you were telling me a story about someone that you knew, and I could relate to it. And that's how it felt while you were reading it to me. And I've had, we've done this a lot, and I've had others read it, but I've never felt that way, like someone else, like you knew who you were talking to. Like, so I definitely appreciate that.
It was empowering for me. The eye contact that we had during the whole exchange was something that it just kind of like made me realize, the struggle, it still exists, but we're still pushing through it. And that when you have somebody to share that story with you, it just gives you that a little bit more oomph, right, to get through what you're getting through, and to know that people are paying attention. More importantly, people are depending on you. So, thank you.
Thank you, Brandon and Joaquin, for sharing. And I just want to add that I felt that connection with our guest readers and monologuists. And, when Deborah gave Brandon a hug, it's just, my heart melted. I had tears in my eyes. And of course, you couldn't see that. So I was very thankful that Spirit of Grace did a wonderful job with their song and brought me back. And, it warmed my heart. So thank you all for having that special connection. And I could feel it. So thank you again. And today is a special day in our country honoring the civil rights leader, and particularly Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I would like to ask Velveta and Deborah, how do you hold Brandon and Joaquin's story from the perspective of the legacy of Dr. King and the civil rights movement?
Brandon, I am so glad that you started the monologue talking about Dr. King. In his last year of his life, it was very clear that he was becoming more radicalized and more angry with the systemic injustice that's in this country. And he started to speak out about poverty and about war. He went to Chicago and lived in a very poor community just so he could understand it. And as you said, 2 weeks after he was assassinated, he was supposed to be in Washington, D.C. with hundreds of thousands of black poor people, black and white poor people, with the poverty, confronting that poverty. But he also knew, though, that he had taken us to such a place that is really now our work to do. And so for you, two black men that have felt the injustices of this system firsthand, know that this is your work to continue.
I would just say that, as you mentioned, Brandon, Dr. King was on the move. He really was focused on not just civil rights. What a lot of people don't understand is that he was focused on civil rights for all people, not for just some. And he had gotten to the point in his life where he realized that he had to speak out about certain injustices, one of which was the Vietnam War, and the other was the economic disparities within this country we call the United States of America. Those disparities have become even larger and wider. And what I would like to share is that, as Deborah mentioned, our circumstances have a large part in dictating where we end up in life. And so there is a natural confluence between poverty and young parents who really do not know what to do in raising children, how to show that love, and just all of the things that we want in life: a good education, good health care, so on and so forth. And so Dr. King was looking at the bigger picture of bringing us all together in one commonality, and that was economics. And because he realized that the greatest percentage of the population, that is about 95%, were not being given the economic opportunities that they deserved, the government decided that he had to go. So they killed him. I know that that's something that may shock some people that I say that, but when you know me just a little bit, you understand that I am a person who studies history, and I believe that if you don't know history, you're doomed to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And that's where we are today, with this divisive society in which we live, with the fabrication of this purported other. Oh, you're the other. You're different from me. You're less worthy. That is manufactured. It's manufactured purposefully. And my concern, and what I fight against every day, is that what is purposed in that regard will actually come to fruition.
Thank you so much, Velveta and Deborah. And, that was a really powerful and thoughtful reflection. And for the reminder of, if we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it again. And it just got me thinking of, Joaquin always says this, like the best way to know someone is through story. And I think that's a big reason of why we're here and a big reminder. So thank you for that thoughtful reflection to both of you. And now for Brandon and Joaquin, I would like to ask the same thing to you. How do you reflect on your own monologue and the injustice of the criminal legal system in light of the vision of Dr. King?
Well, I just had to say, I feel now, with us definitely, putting our monologues out there and people actually getting a glimpse into, something that they may have never even known or didn't know that these certain things were happening. Like I said, my situation is not necessarily a unique case, if you will. It happens to a lot of us out there. I feel like with the correlation of with Martin Luther King, the doctor, if I like to call him, it's getting us for people to pay attention more and to start speaking up more and saying things that, hey, this isn't right. Or, at least acknowledging the fact that certain things aren't right. Like, we can change things. And now it's giving people the confidence to actually speak up and do that, actually get outside of your comfort zone and be like, hey, well, that's not right, and I feel like a lot these days, in this day and age, it's happening a lot more. People are actually calling people out on, injustices, if you will, and, it's like, hey, I wouldn't want my kid to be treated like that, so I'm not going to let your kid be treated like that. And I feel like, or people, period. And that's kind of what, Dr. King was trying to, project as well and put out there. It's like, hey, we're all human, we're all the same. No matter how you were raised, you're still a human being. And if I wouldn't let that happen to me, I don't want that to happen to you. So I feel like now, and like I said, with the monologues and everything and correlating that with Martin Luther King, the good doctor, I feel like that's where we are right now with where we're going and things like that. Absolutely.
So I think in regards to my story, which speaks about the lack of economic opportunity and equity, it kind of sheds light on the intersectionality between the lack of economic opportunity and crime. Right? So you see that over and over again, and it's not that we are inherently criminals at all, right? And a lot of people believe that. We're not, ontologically, we are not criminals. We just want a chance, we want a shot, we want an opportunity. A lot of the greatest minds I met while incarcerated. And it always bothered me that these guys, who a lot of them were never returning home, would never get to share their brilliance with their families, their friends, nor their community, right? And as a result of that, it continues to, as far as the black and brown community, the trajectory that we once were, going up and moving up, is starting to descend. And I feel like it's upon me, as well as my colleagues, to change that trajectory. The way we do that is first combating this whole, discrimination, this economic, lack of economic equity, right? And what we chose to do is start first and foremost is with the discrimination, what happens within the legal justice system. And I felt like that's what Dr. Martin Luther King was really trying to accomplish, right? So he was shedding light on those economic disparities. And from there, he was going to bring the fact that we have a lot more in common with each other as opposed to uncommon with one another. And from there, we can start saying, hey, there's something going on here that's bigger than what we think. And we can work together and just give those individuals opportunities that truly deserve it, and working on it.
Thank you, Brandon and Joaquin. Those are also powerful reflections. And like Brandon said, as you were talking about, calling things out, I was going back in my head thinking, because a few days ago, I have the fortune of being a parent like some of us. We were sharing pictures earlier of Brandon's kids, thankfully. But I was like, yeah, a few days ago, I went to the store with my son, and he had a hoodie on, and he had a phone, and he kept putting it in his pocket. And I noticed that the security guards that were looking at him like he was stealing something, like, hey, like, like, it made me feel really bad, and I went home thinking like I should have said something to him, so it really resonates, the importance of calling something out if you see it. And also how Joaquin was talking about, breaking, the same things that are going on with the system, to build a better one, because the system is not working for us. So we need to do something. So thank you so much for your reflections.
Absolutely.
And I have one final question for you, Deborah. How do you hold Brandon Wainwright's story from the dignity of your professional role as the Executive Director of the ACLU Colorado?
Well, the reason I'm the Executive Director of ACLU is because I'm here to use my voice to represent those, like you, Brandon, who may not be invited in the same tables and the same conversations. And our work at ACLU every day is focused on how we dismantle the systemic injustices that we've been talking about here. And it means that first thing is around awareness, and realize that the ACLU has tools, like we have law, we can sue someone, we can have legislation, but it all begins with people like us in this room. What type of society do we want to have, and what are we willing to do about it? And so I do my work from a perspective of hope. And with hope, the first thing is you have to be angry at what is, but also have the courage to do something about it. And so that's why the combination of anger, but the courage to move forward and do something about it, is how I hold my work.
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, and I'm very happy that you're the Executive Director of the Colorado ACLU. And Vilvera, I'm coming to you. If you saw the pattern, I'm coming to you. How do you hold Joaquin Mobley's story from the dignity of your role as a former prosecutor and as a member of the Colorado ACLU Board of Directors?
Hired by Dale Tooley, who was the district attorney at the time, DA in Denver. And the thing about being in that office, you were surrounded by people who were like family, including him. And so he was the patriarch of the family. And the one thing that he said to us is, you are there to do justice. You're not there to rack up convictions. You're not there to put people in jail. You're there to do justice. And so I was blessed with the opportunity, because prosecutors have a lot of power. They hold people's lives in their hands. And the decisions they make can either cut a person in two or lift a person up. So I always looked at that prosecutorial role as being one where I was to do justice. And had I not been in an office where we had a leader who was of that mindset, I actually would have never taken a position there after interning for a year. I am a lawyer, and lawyers are taught in law school that we are to do justice, and lawyers are officers of the court. Sometimes lawyers forget that. They're in the game to rack up scores for whatever purpose they may have in mind. So my role with ACLU Colorado is really complementary, because I get to do what I've done since I was 7 years old, and that is to work toward making this world, this country, this state, this city, that we all occupy for just a short time better.
Vilvera, thank you so much for that. And the words that resonate with me the most is there to do justice. And I want to thank you for also having that goal of making this world a better place. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now I have a final question for all of you. We honor Dr. King and keep his vision alive when we take actions to bring about racial and economic justice. What types of actions would you hope our adult listeners and even our young ones might take to create true justice?
I'll kick it off. There's a couple things. First and foremost, I think the action we need to take, if we see something wrong and it doesn't sit right with us in our spirit, we need to speak up, right? So if you see the instance where Armando was talking about how his son was just playing with his phone, something as innocent as that, and you see that the security guard or police officers are eyeing in on that individual, and you know it's nothing else besides his color that is really insinuating that behavior from them, we need to say something to him like, hey, what is this about? Why are you really looking at him like that? Two, I think one of the most revolutionary things we can do now outside of protesting and going to the higher courts and asking for legislation is support black-owned businesses and brown businesses as well. Just give them an opportunity to compete. Believe it or not, you know, something as little as that, going eating at a local food spot, paying for them to come, you know, do plumbing in your house, things like that, all the trades, right? It actually is going to give these individuals a chance to hire more people that look like them that ordinarily wouldn't get a shot. And two, it's going to allow them to expand their services and really show everybody what we are capable of as a group of people. So.
Next, I don't think my mic's on. Here we go. Are we good? Testing. Also piggybacking off of what my brother said here, it's one of the things that I like to say as well. If you see something, say something. It's definitely one of those things where it's like in my situation, you know, I'm sure a lot of people that were around me saw what was about to happen, seen the direction that I was going in, but didn't say anything about it. So it's one of those things where a simple question of, how's your day? What are you doing today? What is your plan? Like, just any little thing can get somebody thinking that at least you care, you know? So put yourself out there to care.
You know, Brandon, I want to take off on what you just said, because as disenfranchised Black and people of color, we will really never have our civil rights, C-I-V-I-L, unless we do have civil rights, S-I-L-V-E-R. Economic justice gives you the freedom and opportunity to make your own decisions and control your own destiny. However, the most important thing for us to do is to vote. Every single decision that impacts our lives is a political one. The law that said somehow or another, even if you have been out of jail, that you had a felony, you couldn't get a job. The fact that you had a criminal sentence and it was twice is what it needed to be. All of those are political systems. And so I really want to encourage us not to sit the 2022 midterm election out. We need to go as John Lewis would often say, we need to vote like we've never voted before. This election is going to be a critical one. It's going to shape the difference in this country.
Dr. King said something to the effect that there comes a time when you have to take a position that is not safe or politic, but you have to do it because you're conscious lest you know it's right. And if there were no time, more needed, that it was more needed for us people to come together and to really realize what is at stake in this country. I think about our politicians We do not hold our politicians accountable. Our politicians, many of them, have their self-interest at heart, and they are controlled by lobbyists. And to stay in office, oftentimes you have to bring in money, and that's what it's all about. It doesn't matter the source of the money. The politicians will go after that money. They are there to represent us, their constituents, but they do not. And I think that we have to hold them accountable. And how do we hold them accountable? We hold them accountable by voting. But the one thing I would say right now, even our vote very well may not be counted. And that's the reality of it. If you look at what's happening across this country in many, many of our states, votes are being suppressed. People are being placed in a position where they cannot vote. And when I think about criminal justice, I think about the state of Florida, where the people there said, felons, they come out, they've done their time, they do probation, they should be able to vote. Yet we have a legislature there in Florida and a governor who said, oh, no way. We're going to make this impossible because we in actuality are going to require that the felons pay all of these fees, which they know can't be paid because the felons come out without employment and enough money in any kind of work to actually take care of themselves and their families if they have some. There are just a lot of things that are going on in this country. And so many of us are sitting back, complacent, thinking somebody else is going to take on the role. Well, let me tell you, you have to be the change you want to see in the world. That's just the bottom line. If you don't do it, who will? The last thing I will say is, parents, learn for yourselves the true history of this country and teach that history to your children. Don't be dissuaded by all of this craziness that relates to critical race theory. It's just a ploy. Critical race theory is nothing but a framework that says, let's teach true history. And parents, model for your children that diversity is what makes this country good. We are not great. We can become great, but it's going to take diversity. So role model for your children what that looks like. Have coffee or a meal with somebody who's outside your network, outside your circles, and get to know those people's lived experiences. Because when you do, you're going to find out that you actually have a lot in common. I mean, genetically, we're almost exactly the same, identical. So thank you. Thank you, Armando.
No, thank you, and thank you for that reminder to be the change we want to see, right? And to stay involved, whether it's through voting, not sitting out the midterm elections, like Deborah mentioned. And it goes back to what Joaquin was saying, like we're also voting every time we go out and spend money. So it is good to have that action item to support our local businesses, minority-owned businesses. Thank you all for those action items. And I hope you all got to listen, our adult viewers and our young ones out there. And before we end with a song from Spirit of Grace, I just want to bring it back together and see if there's anything our monologuists and guest readers would like to say to each other.
I just like to say I'm so inspired by you, Brandon, and you, Joaquin. It takes a lot of courage to share your story. We all have stories. We all have things that we're not proud of. We all need second chances. We all need support. And I can tell you, the first time I heard your story back in October, I was just touched. My heart was touched. My heart was full. And I carry that with me. So thank you.
I would just say every experience that you've had that's brought you to this stage is exactly what you need to put in your toolbox to move forward. So use it wisely.
Thank you. Check again. All right. Thank you for choosing, our monologues. I mean, I'm glad that, our monologues, I know we have other monologuists in our group as well, but for ours to resonate with you two the way that they did, and for you guys to bring it home the way you did, yes, I just really, really appreciate that, because like you said, the tools that we have in our box now, I'm just now starting to use. So I really appreciate that, and to have someone at such a high level of and of respect and integrity to be reading my words, it just means so much, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And I want to thank both of you ladies as well for just taking the time out of your busy day and your busy schedule to really just give our, stories a voice, right? And it just feels like we're family.
It really does.
Right? Mm-hmm. So just like the eye connection that we were having up there really felt like you were speaking to me. And it's just overwhelmingly powerful, and it just fills my heart with like happiness to know that somebody really cares.
Yeah.
And thank you, Amanda, for providing this opportunity.
Oh.
Yes.
I was gonna say thank you all because I'm a co-host, but this is also a good experience to me to be here so close to you all and being part of the process. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm part of another one of Motus's projects, the Undocumented America series. So, a lot of our issues, go hand in hand.
Yep.
And I just want to thank you all for writing powerful, beautifully crafted monologues, but also you for holding them and stepping into their shoes and just holding the weight of that story. Thank you for doing that. And now Spirit of Grace is going to sing one final song, but while they sing, we would love our participants here in the audience that's watching this to take this time to close your eyes, imagine a system of true justice in our country, because if we can't imagine it, then it will be hard for us to take action to manifest it. So enjoy this time of visioning.
Hey, Kristen,
Yes. Check.
what is your race?
Human.
What is your nationality?
American. And this is my home too. La, 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 la.
Imagine there is fairness.
La, 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 la.
I wonder if you can.
La, 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 la.
No separate rules for others.
La, 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 la.
Imagine man is man. Imagine all the people living
Imagine there is justice. First time it's ever been. Oh, imagine there's a future. Imagine sin is sin. Oh, imagine the people living for today. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. La, 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 la.
Thank you, Spirit of Grace. You guys put a definitely different twist on that John Lennon song that just resonates a little bit more with me. You know, total respect to John Lennon and the Beatles. I love their work, but that just hits home for me. So that ends our program for today. On behalf of Motus Theater, we want to again thank our powerful JustUs monologuists, my brother Brandon Wainwright, our civic leaders Deborah Richardson and Velveta Golightly-Howell. Thank you so much. Our program sponsors, the Colorado ACLU, Sister to Sister, International Network of Professional Black Women, and the City of Boulder Human Relations Commission, and of course, Motus funders like you and everybody out in the crowd today. We would also like to thank Motus's powerful contributing artists, including Motus Theater's artistic director, Miss Kirsten Wilson, and Spirit of Grace. Round of applause for her. We love her. She put this all together. She gave life to our stories. Before we sign off, I encourage you to support Motus's JustUs project with a significant contribution. At the end of the performance, a QR code will appear on the screen. You can scan the code with your camera and it will take you directly to our donation page. Please, if you want to hear more of these stories, please, contribute or, pass it along to those who have the capacity to contribute as well. There's also a link on the computer landing page for this event. I think you may agree that these stories you just heard from JustUs need to be heard locally, regionally, and nationally to inspire action to transform the criminal legal system. I'm asking you today to support Motus Theater so we can share these impactful stories widely across the world.
Thank you, Joaquin. We know that a profound way to help people understand the need for change in the carceral system is to step into the shoes of someone who has lived through the devastating impacts of the criminal legal system. With your support, we will present allied performances such as the one you just experienced today, and we will partner Motus's JustUs monologuists with DAs, police officers, legislators, DOC administration, and more. Your contributions make these performances not only possible, but successful. Thank you for your support.
And lastly, with love, light, and gratitude, let's work together, you all, and let's create true justice in our country. Thank you all so much.